sometimes you're trying to hit the pulse. But I know at DJBooth, we're trying to get closer to being the conversation. So that way we're not trying to catch it. When you are the conversation, you are no matter how long it lasts, you are at the beginning. It gets to the end, but you don't want to be at the end of the conversation. Like it just because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean anything. You showed up to the party late, all the alcohol's been drunk, and everyone's passed out.
Right.
They don't even know you were there. So it doesn't make any sense to try and catch waves. It's trying to produce them.
New episode of One Could Argue, and this week I have on my guy Yoh Phillips, who is the senior writer over at DJBooth. Shout out to Ja. He connected us during the Dreamville sessions, and through us talking and just chopping it up and just being familiar with his work, Yoh is one of those people who is so good at what they do. It makes you want to do one or two things. It makes you either want to do what they're doing because he just makes it look so dope, or it makes you want to study their process and see how they manage to get the results that they get, so you can take that back to your own work, your own skill set, and see how you can build on it. So I appreciate Yoh for being on the episode and taking as much time as he did in going through his process from A to Z and really giving so many gems on how to execute better at writing specifically. But like I said, it crosses over into just any field. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Shout out to Cool Deep for mixing it for me, and shout out to Roop for the smooth B-cam shots, man. Root was floating around, made it look real icy. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Leave a comment, all that good stuff, and let's get into it.
Yeah, no, these are great.
I
really appreciate the fact that you shot these on a cell phone. Because I would never guess. I would have never been like, oh man, let me go upgrade my iPhone. No.
Yeah, I shot that one at the Chinese store up the street. I was waiting for my boba tea.
Were you just looking at things like, I like this?
Yep.
Let me get this. This goes back to the Spielberg conversation a bit, because I think the accessibility of technology now allows us, you don't feel like it's so beyond you to start taking pictures or even like editing in a certain kind of way. And the fact that it can look as if it was done on a Canon or it was done on a Nikon is because of, like, I think where technology is, and also like your vision. You can see what filters work or how to edit these. I love your contrast.
I appreciate
just the way you make colors pop. I feel like helps really sell that your images weren't made on a cell phone. I think sometimes the iPhone photos can be a little flat, and it's just about making these colors pop out. Yeah, man. What did you want to talk about? I mean,
no, we was flowing. Honestly, that literally, oddly enough, was going right into just kicking the conversation off. Well, First of all, new episode of One Could Argue. Hey. I'm here with my guy, Yoh
Thank you
Phillips.
For having me, man.
Man, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, man, helping me put this together.
Man, Kyle, we met during the Revenge of the Dreamer sessions.
Yes.
And I knew you'd be someone that I was going to have to sit down with when, after the session was over, you text me, and we were sending paragraphs back and forth. I was like, yo, I can't even, like, I got to respond to Kyle with, like, thoughtfulness. Like, we were having a really good conversation, and then I realized, like, man, I've been in this for an hour.
No, for real though.
I was like, I might as well go talk to him. We're going to be conversing like this. I might as well just pull up and kick it.
It's funny because I've been taking up a huge interest in writers.
Oh, word.
And just being able to be around someone like yourself who is a writer and takes it very seriously and is good at what you do. I was this is who better to ask these questions, because you start to, as with anything, you start to analyze and be like, yo, like, how did you come up with this? How did you structure this? How did you whatever?
Yeah.
So it was like, holy shit, how the fuck did I get so fortunate, you know what I mean, to be able to have these conversations? So like I said, like you said, like once I was like, yo, this is my guy. Yo, what you think about this? What's going on? And I was like, okay, this is dope, because even how the conversation was flowing and the feedback, I was like, oh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I was bugged out for real. And there were so many times I was like, yo, let me get him up for a podcast. For real, like, it takes too much time to stop and type as much as you want to type.
But we was in it.
Yeah,
so that's why I was like, I definitely want to get in. But also, I think with anybody in any creative field, you like to talk about your process, and you like to talk about all the things that kind of go into your art form, because you're in it. You know, as a writer, it's very isolated.
Right.
You spend all the time just in your own head or in your own room. So you want to leave and make sure. Oh yeah, it's a little. I think I tapped it. Yeah, I tapped it. That was my fault. There we go. Yeah. But what I was saying was that I think the isolation of being a writer, it makes you want to have, you know, you build your tribe and you build your conversations because it also helps you, you know, verbalize and realize all the things that you do, you know, intentionally and unintentionally. Mm-hmm. So I try to have these conversations with people that engage, you know.
Yeah, and I think when I met, because I met you and Jinx. Well, I met you the day before.
Yes.
It's funny because Willie, one of our producers, was like, yo, y'all seen Yoh was here? And I was like, no way. I was like, where? So you literally came upstairs and I saw you, but I didn't know it was you.
Right.
So
I was with Ja.
You was with Ja. And then Ja walked by. He was like, yo, this is Ja. I was like, oh, shit, what up, yo? And then the next day, I think it was the next day, you came back up with Jinx.
If it was not the next day, it was like the day after.
Like the day after, you came back up with Jinx. And just through giving you guys a tour of the building and just seeing the things that you guys were paying attention to and the things that y'all were pointing out, I was like, okay. Because like I said, it's not lost on me, or I'm not still not appreciating the fact of you guys are people that I have noticed from afar, from the distance of, your work and things that you've produced and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think in regards of meeting people who fill that space, and you get to have a dialogue and you see that, like, this is the real deal. Like, y'all really pay attention to what's going on. It's like, and I think it's sort of how, like, with how social media has progressed, it's like certain people used to be like, okay, if I'm trying to get information on sports, the people from ESPN know it best. But now that there's so many people that can talk about sports, you're like, yo, a lot of these everyday people, I got an uncle who can go toe-for-toe with such and such, who can go toe-to-toe for Skip Bayless or Shannon Sharp or whoever. So with knowing that and being able to meet you guys and get a feel for the conversation and seeing what y'all pay attention to, what y'all point out, it's like, there's a reason why y'all are here for real. And I'm happy that y'all are in that space. You know what I mean?
Thank you. I love Jinx. And when we first met, it was very instant. Of like realizing that we both share like a love for diving in deep.
Right.
You know, you talk to Jinx, he's going to pick up on everything in the room.
100%.
He's going to give you all the information he knows, and he's going to want to know everything that you know.
Yeah.
You know, he's like a sponge like that. And I have a very similar thing about myself that's very like always searching for information, always searching for more expansion on subjects that I love. And hip hop was one that, to me, before I even started writing, I was just in albums. I was just reading. I was just doing so much to figure out everything that I could, you know, from what was happening in Atlanta to what was happening in the 90s to every aspect of it. And I feel like those people are the ones you do follow on social media because you want to see their insight, you want to see their opinions, and it helps you kind of form your own opinions and it helps you expand upon your own knowledge of subjects that you love. So yeah, man, like even just being in Tree Sounds where every nook and cranny of this place is history, like it's like it's a museum. This is a museum.
It is though.
It's a museum.
It is though, and we like I said, with y'all pointing that out, I was like, okay, like it was fun to get that perspective and even see from the seasoned aspects that y'all have from experiencing what you've experienced to still come in and point out. It's like, like people who've seen shit outside of here come back and they're like, so for me, it's like, like you feel yourself more. You're like, yo, like it makes me appreciate it even more because it's like people who could be anywhere point this out. Yeah. And it just makes it instills even more value. But to that point, I wanted to talk to you about, because I am, like I said, very interested in you as a writer, what you do.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like what does that process look like for you as a writer? What is the starting point?
It's a little different with everything. So I've been working at the website DJBooth.net for the last 4 to 5 years, and I'm pretty much able to ask myself the question of what am I passionate about today before I start pitching. Like no matter what it is, they're gonna want to know like what do you want to write. So finding that answer out has changed throughout the years. Sometimes it's looking on social media and kind of seeing what conversations are being had. is going through my phone and seeing what songs have moved me that day or have moved me recently. I have like a bunch of notes in my phone of just like quotes. I can pull a quote out and be like, what does this mean to you? And how can you expand this upon on a higher level? It's really just searching for that magic that inspires the words to kind of just jump off the page. That's, to me, the best thing about working at DJBooth is they allow me to like chase the magic and not necessarily chase the clicks or chase the viewers. So that's kind of it, man. Like, it's really just absorbing and sharing, I would say, is like my process as a writer. And I absorb a lot of content, not just what's online, but I watch old movies, I read old books. I try to have a lot of conversations. Anything that could particularly spark. I'll be talking to friends, and I'd be like, that's going to be in an article. Just like flat out, like that right there, you just sparked something that's gonna send me down a rabbit hole. And I think that's what helps me as a writer is I always have ideas, and it's because I'm always searching for something, even if it's something as tiny as a commercial. A commercial can send you down a rabbit hole of all the rap commercials from the last 25 years. You know, it's just trying to keep my eyes open, keep my ears open, and to be constantly aware of what's happening. I think that's important for a writer, especially just for me.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because I was just thinking about when me, you, and Jinx were in here and we were talking about what music looks like for adults.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, because, I listen to a Hov song every day of my life. Like, every single day I listen to at least one. And you was like, all right. You was like, wait, what does that mean? It was a bigger point, but it was just like, oh, like, this is how my mind moves. Yes. Like, you're really about this. You know what I mean? You get excited because you're like, there's something to this to be expanded.
Is everything to me. Because, like, well, why do you do that? Like, what is it about hope? Because I don't do that. But for you, that's an everyday occurrence. And like it makes me wonder, like, well, what songs do I play every day? What gets my day started? What moves me? And, like I said, it could easily be, you could do like a playlist of hip hop songs to start your day too.
Right.
It's that easy, but I always feel like everything has a process. Rather we realize why we do things or why we don't do things. It's a way of processing that I think writers and journalism at large has to do when it comes to music. Because from the creative, like, you're here in the creative process, but you see how artists process their thoughts, how some write, how some don't, how the beats play, and everyone has a different mode. But same thing with writers. Like, we all have our different modes about getting to these subjects. And to me, at the heart of it all is just processing.
For sure. So how do you grow as an artist when you're trying to, like, what are as an artist, like, I know for me with videography or with film, I'm like, okay, let me get better at coloring, let me get better at retouching, let me get better at how to structure these videos so they flow seamlessly. Like, when you're looking at the work, how do you dissect that and be like, okay, how can I improve?
Man, I just told myself the other day, stop overthinking. That was one thing I told myself. I was like, you've been overthinking a lot lately. You need to stop doing that. I had a friend recently told me that, what can you do with a little bit more imagination? I thought that was genius, because once you get into, like, once you understand how to do something, it becomes a groove, right? You know how to shoot a video, you know how to edit it. So you have to stop at one point and really ask yourself certain questions. And I think that's where artists grow. When you're on autopilot and you're just making and you're creating, you can come up with a lot of good stuff. You come up with some great things, but there has to be a point where you stop and you look at your work and you look at the way you work and start to wonder, okay, where's the next level? Where's the next, the upgrade of this? And it's just that self-awareness. I think self-awareness is an artist's most powerful weapon. You got to be aware of yourself. You got to be aware of the climate. You have to be aware of all these things. But if the question is, how do you get better? I really do believe you start asking yourself is, what can I do with a little bit more imagination? Because that's when you start seeing certain cuts, certain edits, certain color grades that you probably would have overlooked before if you weren't thinking about that. Same thing with me is, like, I might try and take a way of writing my sentences and my structure and try to make it, how can I get to this point faster? How can I cut out some of this fat? Or how can I extend this in a way where I'm pulling you into a story? Sometimes it's like you look at storytelling like, okay, what's the best way to tell this story? There's short stories, there's long stories, there's fluffy stories, there's minimalistic stories. There's so many ways of doing it, but I think it's taking a subject and morphing the best version of it and constantly asking yourself certain questions. So yeah, I think that's like the best way you to me as an artist grow. Because when you stop asking yourself questions or you start challenging yourself, that's when you tend to get stuck, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get stuck, man. That's my whole thing. I don't ever want to feel like I'm stuck.
Right. I was reading a couple of the articles that you did, and it was interesting because there was one article, to your point in regards of the imagination, there was one article about the end of 106 in Park.
Oh, word.
And the intro was, I visualized it perfectly. It was like, yo, you're coming home, you're not eating your lunch, you're just fighting for the remote, tsunami, like the whole scene was set. I was like, yo, I remember feeling just like that.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because in reading it, I was like, okay, I was ready for it to be longer.
Yeah.
But when I got to the end, it was like, oh,
that was
this could have been longer, but I still understood and I got the exact feeling.
It's a fear, man. I've had to cut like 700 words out of pieces because it's hard to realize sometimes, like, okay, you're thinking about this is going to be published. This isn't just for me. This is going to be published. So is this going to be quote unquote too long for readers who are just trying to get straight to the meat? They want to get straight to the point. Some people they just want to argue with you.
Right.
They don't want to care about the poetry of how you start the sentence off or how you take them down memory lane. Some people just want to know, what are you trying to say? And for those people, you have to feel like, all right, the story has to progress. It has to move. I have to get to the meat. I have to take my rise in action, hit the climax, and then drop the thing off. Some pieces, they just don't require you to extend them so far. Even if you can, it's because that you got to think about the readers here. You know, there might be a space for that same story to be told in a longer form, but I have to recognize that this isn't the long form story.
Right.
This is something that I want people to read, because it's about 106 in Park, but we were so many years away from when 106 Park was what it was. So now there's going to be a generation of readers that's not as attached to it as we were.
Right.
And, you know, I can only flirt with the nostalgia of it for so long before someone's like, I don't get it. Someone didn't live that. Someone didn't come home and see Toonami.
Right.
Some people come home and see Netflix. That's crazy to me. But so that's just one instance of a story where you're having to write it out. You can have the subject. It could be so set up perfectly, but you have to make some choices, like creative choices about like length and about in which way you want to frame this story. There's a lot of ways you could frame a story about 106 in Park, but how do you convey these thoughts, these feelings that can resonate with people like you who are super aware of how that feels, and then for people that might not be aware but are just interested enough to click the link. It's a process.
What do you think is what's the longest time you've spent putting a piece together?
Forever. Man, all my pieces take forever. I was telling somebody recently, my friend Donna, about how writing has changed for me over the years. Before, I can just sit down and knock out like 2,000 words of just words, just writing. It was just, I feel like when I was younger, I just had so much to say. And then as I get older, I'm trying to think about the ways that I say it. And you have your days where you sit down at the computer and you can have the subject, but you don't know where you're going. And you know how it feels to get out your bed at night around 2 or 3 a.m. and you had to walk into the kitchen.
Right.
There's no lights on. And you know everything in your house, but you're still cautious of how you step because you don't want to bump into the wall or
hit your toe on that little.
So you're walking cautiously through your house. It's still your house. It's just there's no lights. To me, that's what writing is sometimes. It's walking through your home carefully, trying to make sure you don't hit nothing, that you don't break anything. And sometimes that process is a little slower than what it needs to be. So nowadays, it just takes me a while. It takes me a while to figure it out because I want to get there. I've been writing so long and for so long that I think I've said so much. I take in consideration now at a hyper level of what's being said, how it's being conveyed. I write, I edit, I write, I edit, I go back in, I take words out, I take words in, I cut things out, I add quotes. Like, it's really a journey to get from beginning to end. And like I said, I think some of it has been like, I've been overthinking it a little bit, but I think it's because I care so much. I care a lot about how these words sit on the page. I care a lot about how they're going to be read. I care a lot about the lasting effect of these sentences. You know, I can write something today and 10 people read it tomorrow. And then I can wait 5 years and that same piece has 20,000 people have read it. You know what I'm saying? Like they can change that much now, and I have to be aware that even this current thought, I don't want to be so in the present that this won't make sense tomorrow. That this won't make sense to somebody who wasn't where I was. Because it has, like, you go to the library, there's a lot of books. There's a lot of books. There's been a lot of writers, you know, from so many different years, and I'm trying to make sure that as one that wants to be around for a while, that everything that I write has some type of lasting presence. Like I'm giving something that is universal in thought. That it doesn't matter if it was said in year 2019. That if we get the year 3019, there's something about it that's still relevant. Something about it that still resonates. So I don't know, man. Hours, a lot of thinking, a lot of overthinking, a lot of editing, but probably somewhere between like 5 to 7 hours of just like sitting there, just hammering it out. And then just looking back on it. Yeah, man, it just depends. I do too much. I know. I do
No,
way too much.
it's funny because on the flip side of that, there was another article that you did on Childish Gambino's visuals.
Oh, yeah.
And, bro, like...
That's an OG one, too.
I was bugged out. Because I was like, you literally documented the entire... Like, there were aspects of it, especially me being someone who's familiar with all of his work, how everything flowed together and how long it took to do it. But it was like, yeah, it takes this long to understand and get all of these aspects of it. I was like, yo, like, I wonder if this is one of those things where because you're so well connected with the entire experience of the artist that you can just sit down and just pencil this whole thing out in one go. It's like, yo, I just have a stream of consciousness. And like,
you know what's funny? I don't think I trust my thoughts that well. I think I have to, like, for something like that, I gotta watch all those videos straight through. I gotta watch them in a way that you stop, you pause, you take notes, you stop, you pause, you take notes, you try to figure out the best way of completing the thought. Like, because the thing was, it was a breakdown of all these videos, right? So now I'm like a cop in the crime scene. I'm connecting all the dots.
Yeah, you
know
had scripts and all kinds of stuff. I was like, yo, this is legit,
man. It's so much. It's
like, yo.
And the thing is, like, with all pieces, like, doesn't matter what the subject is, I start reading. I will go find as many articles as I can and read about as everything that I can about this and figure out what information do I feel like needs to be conveyed again. What information do I feel like they left me wanting more? Because even when I started writing, the blog era of journalism, when it was really booming, I always wanted them to say more about the songs. Like, they would be posting songs, and I was just like, man, say more. And that's why, like, the way I write is I'm trying to say as much as I feel like when you walk away from it, that you absorbed an excess amount of knowledge. And if you want to go and study more, you can, but it satisfies a certain taste of information. It satisfies a certain hunger of wanting to know, actual facts, actual opinions, and then you throw some poetry in there too to get the wordsmiths. But it's definitely like trying to give you this meal, this 5-course meal of information. So I got to do certain things. It's just I gotta get some time back because it just takes me a while to get there. But I always feel satisfied knowing that the effort that goes into it is gonna resonate with somebody.
Right.
Like, someone's gonna read this, and it's not about having like a bazillion readers, but I just need that one person that's gonna read this and appreciate everything that it offers.
Right. So in regards of, I guess, making a comparison to music, how now you have artists that can go back and be like, okay, let me revisit this album. I may update it with this. I may update it or take this away or remix this. Is that something, as a writer, is that something that you think about, or is that something you feel like this shouldn't be included in this space? Going back and be like, yo, I have so much more thought on this now, or I have so much more understanding on this now. I wish I could revisit it, or I should revisit it.
Not usually, no. I think if there's certain things I didn't convey as well as I needed to, that tends to be what irritates me. Like, I could have said that better. But no, I hate that when if I have a typo, I hate going back and changing it. I rather my typo just sit there because I would rather that I'm not perfect. I hate it. I just rather it sit there. I rather it stare at me and be irritated for the rest of my life than go in there and change it. I want Because by the time I publish something, I always feel like I put in so much time and effort
Right.
that it's ready. What I don't like about editing albums is that I want it complete. The same thing. I wouldn't want someone to read something I've written and I'm telling them like, yeah, man, you give me 2 weeks, I'm gonna be back in there, and I'm gonna no, I want to present you something 100% done. Again, another food analogy, but I don't go to a restaurant and be like, let me get half the meal now, let me get half the meal later.
Right.
Like cook. You don't gotta. If I want my steak well done, well, not all the way well done. Just give me half of it. And then, you can burn the other end. I want it to be complete. I want to feel like I'm hearing your complete thoughts. I'm hearing your complete version of this song. I hate when people send me incomplete songs. Why are you sending me this? Why are you giving me something that's not done? I can't tell you what I think about something that's not finished. Give me the whole thing. And that's why I think when writing is like, I want to present the entire thing. Now, I do have this concept in my mind that I've been flirting with about like A-side, B-side articles, where I take a large idea and I present one version of it in a super concise way. And then I take a similar concept that can be based on that and I present another article that coincides with that, but explores like either a different angle, a different version, or an expansion of it. So you get 2 stories that's kind of like based on one idea. Because sometimes I do think I have ideas that I don't explore as far as I can, just because, like I said, you got to think about length, you got to think about cohesion, you got to think about all these things. So you got to end up cutting some stuff out. But sometimes you cut out enough where it's like, man, I got a whole nother story here.
Right.
So it's something I've been like playing around with. I was talking to a producer that also like makes music, and I was like, well, what if we did like 2 interviews? We do a producer interview, and then we do a interview about you as a songwriter, as a singer, and I like, because I would hate to put both of those in one story. Because I feel like, well, there's so much to be said about your production. There's also so much to be said about your process and your writing, all these things. And it's like, well, yeah, it's like A-side, B-side. So it's a thought. It's something I haven't figured out all the way, but it's something I've
That's
like,
dope, though.
considered.
That's interesting because it just makes me think, even in regards to like now when you have like a bunch of artists who are doing the whole album release experience different. You got people doing that at aquariums and stuff like that. It's just like, even going back to what we spoke about before, as far as like creative ideas, it's like, yo, I wonder how I could deliver this whole writing experience in a way that, for something that's been around for so long.
Thank you.
It's like, how can I re-deliver this in a way that people are like, yo, like, this just totally, whether it matched the way I digest information now or it goes with the way how quickly information is given out now. It's like I said, those are the things that I just think about as a writer. Like, what is that like? Like, what is that?
I feel like that is the most irritating aspect of being a writer. You're a part of something that's been here since like the beginning of time. People have been writing forever.
Right.
So there's no new words. No one's creating a new dictionary of words. So we're all got the same amount of words, got the same amount of letters, and we're a part of a system that's old as time. So how do you find new ways of making reading like fresh? How do you, because I mean, now everything else is changing. And obviously people are thinking like, oh, the written word is dying. I don't think that's what it is, but there's no way. You have to figure out new ways of trying to present reading to people.
Right.
Or a new experience that when they do click a link, it doesn't feel like they're reading the same thing they read over at Complex, the same thing they read over at Double XL, the same thing they read over at, or even just another writer's page. I want to figure out a way where it identifies itself in some other form and structure and style. It allows you to read it in this unique to Yoh. And that is just like the ongoing dilemma of my life. It is. It's irritating because you're just like, how do I change the way your writing is presented? How can I change the way that we read articles or the way articles can be presented to people? It's a question I'm constantly asking myself. And then sometimes, a friend of mine once told me, it was like, is the effort more work than how cool the idea is? You can have a cool idea, but the effort... I
feel you on that. I
100%
feel you on that.
Man, I had this whole concept, and I was really trying to convince him to do it. He was like, yo, that's cool, but that's a lot of work. I didn't want to... I wanted us to do a playlist, right? But I didn't want it to be on Spotify or Apple Music or SoundCloud. I was like, to me, it's not personable. So I was like, what if I get, like, a bunch of mini MP3 players, and I send them to people? Like, I make you a 10 to 15 song playlist, and that's yours. It's only for you. No one else has it. He was like, yeah, that's cool. It's a lot of work. So he's like, you're going to make playlists for all these people, and then you're going to buy the MP3 and send them to them, and then you like, they're not going to be able to have these on their phone. So they're going to sit down and listen to it one time. It's cool for one day. And then what's going to be, it's going to be on their shelf somewhere. What, for their kids to adopt later? They're going to pass it down to little Susie.
Right.
It's like, it's cool. And it changes how personable the music sharing experience is. But it's just a lot of work. And also just it doesn't have a lasting effect, I think. It's just cool for the moment. So that's another thing. It's like, okay, how can I make something that's going to also last? The way it hits you, the way it makes you feel isn't just momentary. It's not just for a second. That's what things I think make us, like classic albums tend to hit us. No matter when you hear them, you can hear them today, you can hear them in 10 years, you can hear them in 20 years. They still going to hit. It's like trying to create that experience as a writer too for anything, whether it's how I want to present playlists, how I want to present articles, how I want to present any kind of content. I want to try to get as close to something that I feel like is going to last.
Is this whole deal with how quickly people are absorbing content, is that something where you're like, okay, what's the piece that how do you deal with that? It's like, oh, here's a piece I can knock out in a half a day or whatever the short time period is for the sake of, because to an extent, you have to provide something to stay relevant. Now, how far you go with that depends on the person.
Right.
But is that something that you have at least been trying to formulate? Okay, how can I stay involved and still find my own pace of how much I want to do?
Man, well, for me, I think it's because I'm not necessarily running the race. I just know I have to be consistent. So, like, what does consistency mean to you?
Right.
It might not be in, like, a day-to-day basis. It might be like a piece-by-piece basis. Okay, let's say I drop 3 pieces this week. That's 3 forms of content that's been released. But I think the real chase is how timely something is. Like, if you have an idea and it has to be out in an hour or it's dead. I think one piece, it came out like a day late, where we were trying to do something. Okay, you remember Frank Ocean's Tumblr got hacked, and before it was like officially that it was hacked, there was this post about a song featuring like Andre, SZA, and Kendrick, and the idea was to try and build a piece around just the idea. Let's think about how that feels. Like, can you imagine that song, or if that song was a super group? So we were just kind of trying to do something a little bit more imaginative, and I ended up writing it. And I sent it over to my editor, but they just had so many pieces on to be put out that day that it ended up getting put out the next day, and it didn't have the same effect, I think. If it would have been out within like the first couple of hours. Then, because it was a conversation piece for a while, and then by the time the piece came out, that conversation had moved on to something else.
Right.
So sometimes you're trying to hit the pulse. But I know at DJBooth, we're trying to get closer to being the conversation. So that way we're not trying to catch it. When you are the conversation, you are no matter how long it lasts, you are at the beginning. It gets to the end, but you don't want to be at the end of the conversation. Like, it just, because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean anything. You showed up to the party late, all the alcohol's been drunk, and everyone's passed out.
Right.
They don't even know you were there. So it doesn't make any sense to try and catch waves. It's trying to produce them. So I think that's what I always consider when I'm writing anything. Whether the subject is something that's kind of more timely or timeless, I want to figure out how it can be the pulse of the conversation and not necessarily like the whisper.
Interesting.
I don't know, man. I guess because I've never felt like I had to keep up. I didn't want to. Like, I see so much content and I get tired. So sometimes, like, you don't even want to put anything out in this.
Yeah.
It's just so much. We're all like devouring constantly that sometimes you might miss a day or two without having anything out, and you don't feel horrible about it because you're just like, there's so much going on that hopefully when I do produce something that it has a chance to kind of live in this space. But I think the more, if I had to overthink about keeping up, I don't think my work would be as good as it is, because it's no longer just about like, oh, what's pushing me passionately. It's not being what's driving me to keep up. and I'm cool. Like I'm good. I like what everyone else is doing. Like I like to see people content. I like to share other people's content. Like it doesn't have to be about me all the time. And I think that mentality is that I want to always be saying something. And if it's not worth saying it, then I can miss some things. I was like, I'm cool with missing waves right now. I was like, okay, I can miss a conversation. It's cool. Mm-hmm. It's not gonna hurt. Yeah. But it'll kill me if I'm trying to catch conversations and I am late or I haven't figured out the most thoughtful way of conveying my thoughts on something. Like if I rush through something, I've definitely rushed through pieces trying to catch it, and like the end result wasn't what it would have been if I would have took more time to consider. So yeah, I'm not really chasing it. Not everyone can, but I wouldn't recommend you being so caught up in the race that you end up doing things that you wouldn't want to do otherwise.
So how are you gauging your growth? How are you gauging your... I don't know. I'm not sure how a writer measures their success.
I have no idea. I have no idea how successful I am at all. Yeah. Or I don't really know how far I've come since I've started. I definitely have had great opportunities to do some amazing things. Mm-hmm. Even like the Revenge of the Dreamer sessions. For some people that have been following me for a while, that was a very like, yo's made it moment. Like he got an invite to, I was like, that was cool. Like that's cool. Like, and I'm never gonna belittle coming here, but like just the invitation, I was like, oh yeah, the homies. Right. We're gonna be at Tree Sales. I'm Tree Sales all the time. Mm-hmm. So for some things, I think some people measure success for you and what happens, and where you can be, who's watching you, who's reading you, all these things. But I think for writers personally, I think the best honor that I can be given as a writer is the opportunity to keep writing. That is like the highest honor, as long as I have the chance to keep conveying my thoughts and to keep putting words out there, and that people still want to read what I have to say. Yeah. I can't think of anything better. Like I can't monetize it and quantify it in any other way, but like as long as someone's like, you want to write this? As long as someone's saying that to me, as long as someone's offering me that opportunity and I get the chance to do that, then I am as successful as I could ever hope to be.
That's interesting. I asked that because I was listening to a roundtable with it was James Baldwin, Langston Hughes, what's the lady who wrote Raisin in the Sun? Lorraine Hansberry, I believe.
Was there a goat there too? This is like
it was nuts. It was nuts. I was surprised I found it, bro. I was deep diving in YouTube and I found it. I was like, there's no way this is real. I'm gonna send you the link. But they were talking about their experiences as writers in that time, which had to have maybe been like the 60s, 70s.
Yeah, completely different time to be
completely different time. But it was interesting as they were sharing their experiences and what they were dealing with. Yeah. And I realized that Langston Hughes was kind of on some bullshit a little bit. So it was interesting because it was on one part of it was interesting because the nostalgia that you have hearing about these people coming up. I've never heard Langston Hughes' voice a day in my life, so I was so amazed. But once you get over that and you start hearing the conversation, it's like, you're a person with ideas who can sit across from me just like Yoh was sitting across from 100%. Me. But as they were sharing some of the ideas, they were pretty much just talking about how, as Black writers, the experience for them is sometimes difficult because they were saying how, hey, like, I literally grew up with other famous writers. They were rambling off a bunch of names, growing up in Harlem, all of these different places, and it was like, we went to the same schools together, but it's harder for me to get my pieces to this person. It's harder for me to get my pieces sold in Hollywood. It's harder for me. And that's where, this is why I knew Langston was on some bullshit. He was like, He's like, I don't really know if, I don't necessarily agree that it's harder for Black writers to get their work out there as much as it is for white writers, as long as they're just being really sharp with their words, as long as they're whatever. And I was like, and James was like, nah, I don't know, bro.
I don't know what world you living in.
I was like, and I was like, Langston, what you on, man? Don't make me sad.
I wish it wasn't as easy as being better. Like, oh, yeah, if you get better, 100%.
100%.
I will say I'm in a unique situation as I didn't pursue writing in school, and I didn't pursue higher education where journalism and writing was something I was around other writers and journalists. Like I was very much isolated when I started writing, and even now, Atlanta's kind of funny. You run into 100 rappers, you might bump into one journalist, you might see one or two guys. So it really kind of put me into my own world. So I don't really look at why I don't get something or why I didn't get a phone call. This year especially, I was like, what's for me is for me, as long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And like I said, like I would never want to get too deep into like the Black writer experience if I know my experience is extremely unique to how I got to where I'm at.
Right.
Like I think someone else in New York City that's been running and chasing this for 10, 15 years, their experiences, and they'll be able to talk about how certain things didn't come their way or how certain things came their way. So I'm still learning what it means to be a Black writer in any space. But I do think being so isolated in coming up and being so isolated in the desire to be a writer that, when DJBooth called, I was already probably like 3 years in, and I was just like, any opportunity to write anything I was on. Like I was working at Olive Garden. So like if I just got a chance to write like a blurb, I was on it. Like let's go. And when DJBooth offered me that position, I was probably doing like some freelance stuff for my former managing editor, Nathan Slavic, who had DJBooth's brother site, Refine Hype. So he had the brother site. I was sending him pieces that he was posting, but I was never on DJBooth. And the day they merged, I sent him an article. And he was like, this is going to be on DJBooth.
Nice.
Like
perfect
it was
timing.
perfect. Like the timing couldn't, and I hadn't sent him anything in maybe like 2 months because I was working at Olive Garden, and that's depressing. So it was dope. But it was just like when you got a 9 to 5, man, sometimes it can be the hardest thing to go home and produce content, produce good ideas, produce stuff. So I probably went to like a little dry spell, and I had an idea, and I had loved it so much. I was like, let me just see where this goes. Wrote it, knocked it out. Sent it to him. He hit me back. He was like, oh yeah, I love this. It's going to be on DJBooth. And I was like, well, why? He was like, oh, we're merging the sites. And when the sites merged, Z ended up reading it, and he loved it, and we were in contact. And they had promised me, they were like, right now we can't pay you, but the moment we get the cap space for a writer, you'll be our first choice. And they true to their word. They didn't have to keep that to me. They could have went with somebody else. Definitely tons of qualified writers, but they believed in me enough to stay true to that and have, assisted me. And because I've had that assistance through them to have that platform, I've gotten other jobs. There hasn't been a job I've gotten writing that did not come through a piece written on DJBooth. So, when you have the platform and you have the opportunity to have that and producing content constantly, you do get opportunities. That's why I tell people, like, you got to put stuff out. Because if you don't put anything out in any capacity, it doesn't get seen. And if it's not seen, it doesn't offer the opportunity for you to get another job. Right. And if you don't get another job, nothing moves. So, like, even if you are producing films, get a small budget, shoot a short, put it out. And you're putting it out because you just want to showcase something. Yeah. Because showcasing something is better than everything being up top. You could be a genius. If no one sees it, you're not 100%. Going to get looks. And like, of course, this isn't talking about the academics of everything or like the institutional aspects of everything, but this is just, to me, at the very fabric of it, just completing ideas, putting them out, and allowing the opportunity for things to happen, for things to occur. I think at the very basic level, if you're doing that, a lot can happen and a lot will happen. And, how you maneuver from there can, change your life.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just like being on YouTube, and it's like you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn, and it's like, well, what have you done to apply any of this? It's like you can't even know. You still don't know if you can actually do it. You just know you've seen it. You
can literally talk about something
right.
with like all the knowledge of a pro, but if you haven't been able to produce something, and sometimes it's not about it being like great or classic. It's just pitting those ideas where someone could be like, whoa. Like Barry Jenkins' first film wasn't like the greatest movie ever made, but a lot of people saw his vision. Right. And it's like, okay, this guy has ideas. This guy has flavor. This guy has style. So, of course, you know, when it was time to make Moonlight, people can go back to that first movie. And even though it's not, you know, like this huge feature, a lot of the same themes and ideas and concepts that he's been like able to translate to the big screen, he did on a very tiny budget, you know, shoestring budget, but still it's the ideas. Like, man, if you got ideas, it's just how do you present them? How do you get them out? Finding that way can be so life-changing for you. That's what I think. Langston was tripping though.
I was like, tripping. Langston, bro. I was like, bro, why are you doing this, yo? There was some points when he was making some good points. I was like, bro, you Stacey dashing me right now, bro. Yeah, like, stop this shit.
60s and 70s. Like, just being a black writer back then, though, a lot more different challenges you had to face.
And I feel like they were much more concentrated. You were much closer to the source.
Yes.
It's like, if anything, I would still be pissed at someone saying that right now.
Yeah.
But I'm like, we're so disconnected from how bad shit really was. I could give you the sliver of the benefit of the doubt.
The walls are in different places. Yeah. Before they were all around you. Yeah. Now there's a couple back doors you can walk in. There's a couple homies might throw you a bone.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of different ways to maneuver now that wasn't even possible. You know, the internet did open up a lot of opportunities for us to connect and for us to display and for us to showcase. But back then, the spaces that to break through just they didn't manifest anywhere. Like, you had to make your own magic back then.
Yeah.
And that's just a difficult thing to do, especially with everything that was going on in America and just racism. Racism is a very powerful thing.
It is.
This is very powerful.
It is.
I don't think we talk about like how powerful racism is. Just as in a concept, racism is extremely powerful. So back then, having to face so much racism, I'm amazed at what black people were able to accomplish.
100%, every single day.
Yeah,
it's like, yo, I've had days where I just had a long week and just dealing with just a job or you know what I mean, your girl or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's like, can you imagine waking up knowing I might get my ass bit by a dog, and then I might get slapped in the head with a fire hydrant, and it like. And no one can do shit about it. Like, I can't imagine having to deal with that every single day that intensely.
Psychological, it has to weigh on you. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, like, super blessed to be in an era where things are a little different.
Right.
We still, it exists. It's very present. But it's present in different ways, and it's not as omnipresent where it was before, you know. And then plus we live in Atlanta. I think that really changed the way I view black people, because you've seen every kind of black person in Atlanta, right? Every single one. You didn't bump into millionaires, and you didn't bump into extremely intelligent homeless people, like, and all levels. So I always feel like Atlanta has helped me always see in black folks something as broad as anything's possible. Because you can run into somebody that has done everything in Atlanta. Man, I think one of the homies had a song where he was like, man, I could tell you someone that made $100,000 doing hair. You know what I'm saying? That's pure hustle. But that'll happen here. You know, I don't know, you can say that story everywhere else, but you find a black woman in Atlanta doing hair, bro, she can be a millionaire.
They just opened, there was a spot up the street from here that was vacant for at least 2 years. Yeah. They put a hair boutique there. The lot is
going
full
up
every day, yo. And this is an industrial boulevard. Yeah. People don't just be pulling up in no industrial areas. We sell rugs and shit out here. Like, I was like, every day, yo.
It's amazing.
It's insane.
That's what I think. Hustle in Atlanta is so interesting, because you see it and you know, like, man, if I want something, I gotta get it. I gotta figure out how to make it happen. And I don't know if that's everywhere. Like, if everywhere you have that's so present. I've seen so many people win in rap. Of course I can think I can rap. How could I not? You know, same thing with anything. If you see somebody, you got 10 businesses and you watch all 10 businesses flourish, why wouldn't you be number 11? You know, my parents are business owners, and they have a skating rink on the south side. And I can't remember the last time my parents worked for somebody, right? Like, I just cannot imagine I was like 7 when they had their first rink. So for the last 20 years of my life, I've watched as business has flourished. I've watched as business has been hurt. I've seen them make great decisions. I've seen them do things that they had to change up, but it was always theirs, you know? And I've seen like how that shapes me about what I want to get. Cause like I can't watch them do their thing and always have this concept of ownership and not
want
try
to get my shit off.
Come on now, like, you got to. But like I said, I think Atlanta, bro, like if you're here and you're black and you just have ideas, you're gonna be around so many people that got their ideas popping.
Right.
Why wouldn't you want to put your foot forward?
Right.
And try and make it happen?
Yeah.
Got to.
So what does the team look like for a writer?
It's your editors. It's your editors, and it could be other writers, but it's mostly your editors. Because that's the two-way process. It's the piece, and then it's the editing. You got a great editor, you're going to have great pieces. Because you could be a great writer, but there's going to be things that I think... And the editor is just the way they view a piece. They're looking for all the things you missed. You know, not just typos, but looking at, okay, maybe if you move this paragraph up, you get a stronger intro. Or if, let's say, you cut out some of the fat at the end and get straight to the point, you got a strong closing. It allows you to have a mirror that reflects your thoughts, but also reflects other ways you can go about it. So that's why I say you have a good editor. When I was coming up, I didn't have an editor. I did have friends to try and edit for me, just because I felt like I always needed a soundboard. And it didn't work out so well. They weren't editors. They were just friends that could read.
Right.
Which is, that's no shot to them. Some of my friends are extremely like thoughtful in their suggestions. But working with my editor Z, I've had 3 or 4 different editors over at DJBooth since I've joined the team. And I've learned so much from them. And also, like, freelancing, I've worked with some really good editors over at The Hundreds, over at OK Player, over at Mass Appeal. So when you're working with editors, it helps you become a stronger writer because you pick up on some of the things that maybe you didn't think of while you were writing it. But now the next time you know, okay, I apply the same way of thinking, I got a stronger piece right out the gate. You know, sometimes you hit those pieces, they're magic from front to back, and, you know, an editor doesn't have to come in and do too much. But I always do enjoy a little bit of something because it's all in your head, right? You're in your head. So some great ideas in your head aren't that great on paper.
Right.
And maybe you don't realize it, but it does have someone to say like, come on, yo, that's not it. Right. So it's always, to me, and that's why I like having editors change my perspective on the idea of a genius. I feel like you can be, everyone has somebody that some work goes through. Every writer has had an editor. Every editor has found the way to make sure their writer is able to convey their thoughts in the best possible way. Same thing with rappers. Like, everyone has an engineer that comes in and makes sure everything's where it needs to be at. The producers assist. You got A&Rs who make suggestions. You got, like, the whole 9. It's not just one person conjuring all this stuff that creates this wonderful masterpiece. Like, even painters will have someone come in and suggest things. That's why it's like, I believe in art more than people now. Like, what is the art of this? What did you create? It's not that you did it, but what is the art saying? If the art is showing me genius, then the art is genius. It's not the person. The person may have been able to find all the right tools, all the right companions to convey this wonderful masterpiece. But the art is still the masterpiece. It's the art. They can try the same thing and make shit, but the art is just shit. Doesn't mean the person is incapable of another masterpiece. It's just like, that wasn't the right tools. You did not figure out the way to make that as great as it needed to be. So I always trust that the art, no matter how we have to get there, I just want the art to be as great as it needs to be. And I think working with great editors helps me get there as often as I can. So yeah, I think if you're a writer, try and get you a good editor. If you're not working with a good editor, then that might be a skill you have to work on too. Think about the ways that you think about your pieces and then take a step back. Read it from a different point of view. Ask yourself some questions that you wouldn't ask yourself naturally. And hopefully the kind of answers you get coming back from that helps you make a stronger piece. But I do think that with the state of journalism, what can help tremendously is making sure that all these talented writers are being aligned with talented editors to keep their work as sharp as it can be and help them grow and improve.
Yeah. I remember hearing a saying where it was like, hey, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
facts.
is that like one of the approaches that you take? Like, if I'm a 5-year-old reading this, or if I'm an 82-year-old racist white man reading this, like, are those the types of scenarios that you give? Or
Sometimes I find a very specific person, like a friend, and I'd be like, does this make sense to you? Right? Like, I try to make it seem like if I was writing this to you in particular, and maybe people that would look at this the same way that you would, how would you feel about it? You know, like, you gotta kind of have a tribe of others that you can kind of play off of, because if you're just thinking like, I like it, it's not about you.
Oh,
It's
for real.
not-
Yeah.
So yeah,
you
you do, man. Sometimes like, I write a piece like with my mom. Well, this makes sense to my mother, who you know is like in her early 50s and isn't huge on hip hop. But if she can get it, then it's universal. Man, I just got an email from a friend whose mom watched his mom listened to our podcast about Little John, and she went and for whatever reason found that video of the Migos in the carpool and doing Whitney Houston, and her reaction to it was like, I can't believe I didn't know this existed. And of course, this is somebody's mom, so she might not be as hip, but like just the rabbit hole that Little John, that she watched, she was so engaged with it, she just got on YouTube and started searching things, and obviously like she found Whitney Houston, right? She knows Whitney,
Right,
and then
right.
the way that translates that, oh, well, these guys, I don't know them, but they know Whitney. It's just something like as simple as saying that if you can pit Whitney Houston with the Migos, it'll reach a lady that's in her 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of think about like, how can this reach? In which ways can I present this that it does allow it to just kind of not break through the audience that I tend to write for, but also someone that might have stumbled upon this. In which way that you want them to kind of receive. It's all about receiving, you know, at the end of the day, how we receive content. Not everyone reads things the same way, but you got to think about how will this be received at the end of the day. And it helps when you can find something specific, you know, an age group or a friend group. Sometimes, you know, you got, not all your friends are the same friend. You know, you got some friends that you ball with, you got some friends that you go to concerts with. So,
Right.
like, think about your friend group. Like, okay, if I take those 7 guys and they read this piece, okay, which way can I make sure that it translates to them in a way that it connects, it sticks? Because then they'll be the ones to be like, they'll share it amongst themselves. I have a lot of pieces that people share with their friend groups because they read something and it's like, yo, this is, so-and-so has to see this.
Right.
You know, that's, things move when you hit a person. They can recognize who else would receive this. Like, how would we receive by somebody else? Not everything's for everybody. That's why I think, like, general consensus is a very odd concept. It's like, well, we're all different. But some things will work for a certain amount of people. It's just going to translate. So I know I'm okay when things don't translate, but I have to ask myself, well, why didn't this translate? Which ways could this have been different? Which ways could this have been better? And just transition, like, maybe not even like how well it was written, but like how it was written, how it was structured. Maybe you needed to cut this out and get close to this point faster. You know, it's just always constantly thinking about these things from different perspectives.
That makes me think about the conversation, one of those long text conversations you was having in regards of just like, in this, being a writer and seeing how the digital space has expanded so much, and we have platforms like Reddit or Medium or Twitter where it's just, I would assume it's like a playground, like, oh my gosh,
It
like,
is a playground.
word kingdom, like I can just go ham
This
here.
is why I'm not on Instagram.
Okay.
There's not enough words. As soon as Instagram start writing paragraphs in their captions, I'm there. But yeah, it is. It feels like, that's why like I have to be careful about how long I'm on Twitter, because I could be on Twitter all day. Because it's just thoughts and ideas and memes. So I could be there all day reading, but that's what Twitter actually inspired me to pick up more books. Because I want to be careful about all that I'm absorbing. I feel like if I overabsorb, or if I feel like I see something and I haven't, if I feel like if I take your thought before I get to original thought of my own, I'm in trouble. Like, I always want to feel like I decided how I felt about something first before I feel like I absorb so many other thoughts that now I'm reciting what you said. because like even if it made sense, it's like, but did I come up with this thought?
Yeah.
Like, is this mine?
Yeah.
You know, I want to make sure that I'm not over absorbing thoughts on the internet.
Right.
And that's no disrespect to anybody that's tweeting, but it's just too many of y'all.
Nah, right.
It's just way too many of y'all. I get why people follow one person because I could not imagine being semi-famous and having like 4,000 followers and constantly absorbing not just information about myself, but information about everything. Like, I think the more you're in the spotlight, the closer you definitely want to be. Like, my thoughts are, I'm either like conversing with people that help me figure out my thoughts or that I'm making sure that I can separate how I feel about things versus how I've read about things. Because you open your mouth and say something and you have to sit back and be like, bro, I didn't even believe that. I didn't even agree with that, but I seen 20,000 retweets on the same thought. So I mean, if 20,000 people felt that way, it must be like, nah. So that's why I read more now. I try to start my day off with a book and end my day with a book. And, you know, really engage with writing. So that way, you know, when I sit down at the page, I'm trying to put that same energy into the work.
I know if I'm talking to someone like you, someone who I know takes words very seriously.
Right.
And even on my day-to-day, even though I'm a thinker, I probably don't give as much attention to it as you would give to it.
Right.
But if I'm interacting, it's like how you'll act different when your mom's not home than when she comes home. I'm gonna take my feet off the couch. So it's like, do you experience sometimes where it's like, I see you really trying to talk really, really, really like, you know what I mean? Like using big words, like, yo, you can talk to me like a normal person. Like, you could use the words that are a little bit more basic. Like, I was looking at
SAT words.
No, right. I was looking at some of the reviews for what's the best damn hip hop book?
Yeah.
I was looking at some of the reviews on it, and they were some of the most
expressive.
They was like, this book is so exuberant, the intricacies of it, and it was all of them. It was hilarious, but I was like, I wonder if this is just people being their natural selves, or if it's them reflecting like, yo, because this is about a writer, this is me showing appreciation by using these words to express how I feel about it. If that makes sense.
First off, shout out to everyone that bought a copy of the book. Like, I really appreciate y'all. And I noticed this a lot when I started writing and really started getting notarized for writing. People just approach you a little differently. You know, they approach you in a way where they feel like if your medium is words, then I want to make sure I'm coming into into meeting you respectfully. Right. I kind of feel like if you run into a doctor, right? Like you're a doctor. I want to make sure that you feel comfortable in knowing that I respect your profession. So I always think that's what it is. Those reviews, I know some of them are my friends, and my friends are extra. That
is hilarious, bro. I was reading them. I was like, yo, these motherfuckers gotta be either writers on their own or they just really be into this writing shit. Cause I was like, bro,
but I do know some people that don't write, but when we text, it be like it's a dictionary. It's a thesaurus.
No, for real though.
I feel like it's just the way you engage with people. And one thing I think I try and do with my writing is I try to make words fun. Like, I try to make sentences and try to make thoughts and conveying things in an electric kind of way. And that's what I when I was reading poetry growing up, I always feel like poets use words best. So I wanted to bring that same thoughtfulness into like hip hop. I wanted to make sure people knew it was as poetic as Baldwin can be. So I just think people engage with me with that same energy, and they engage with my work with that same energy, which is dope. I love the fact that you have to kind of think about it a little bit more, you know, like right before I say something. Is this the best way I could say this?
No, for sure. Because even texting you, there was a couple of times where if I was texting somebody else, I would have just went with something way less. But I was like, let me look this word up just to make sure I got the best definition.
I would have went with an emoji if it was somebody. You know?
For real. I know exactly what that be.
But that's just like, it's the fun of being a writer. For a while, I don't know if I even considered that. But like I sent somebody a text today, and they was like, "Man, you're a writer. Like you just are. You just are." And I was like, "Man, yeah, I can't help it."
Yeah,
but I do think me just writing words, just period. Anytime I have to write anything, even when I'm doing like birthday cards, man, like I have to think about what I'm about to say. I just don't want it to be mundane in any capacity, like any way that I'm using words. because I think I just respect the art form of writing. It's just like I said, it's something that's accessible to all of us. We all have words.
Yeah.
We all have the same words. I don't have a bank of words that you don't have. Like we all have the same words, but it's just the way we use them, how we convey them, how certain thoughts can be conveyed with certain words. I'm always considering that. And it's also sometimes it's just good practice to talk to people and make sure, you put a little extra elbow grease
100%.
into the language, because when you send that to your computer, you're doing the same thing. Even if there's no back and forth, you're still looking for the best ways of putting these words. But you can tell whenever my writing gets too poetic, I'm writing. Like I'm in it. So you try to talk to me like it translates so well. But you see me on the weekends, man, I'm not even looking at words.
Yeah.
I'm off it. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be in that space of.
No, it's dope. I think it's dope, and I think it's encouraging. And like I said, to be able to have someone like yourself as a peer, having those interactions, even if it's once a week or every other week or whatever, it makes you.
It's great to
chisel
engage,
that a little bit more.
Man. Yeah, and I always wanted to make sure that when this is all said and done for me, that when people look back on my writing, it made them just appreciate words.
Right.
It just made them appreciate how you could talk about hip hop, how you could write about certain subjects, and hopefully it makes them want to, improve the way they write words, because it's something we all can do.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that, they wrote some of their first articles just because my work inspired them to try and convey their thoughts in a certain kind of way. And, some of them are incredible. Some of them are good, but there's just that inspiration of reading your work and wanting to also write.
Yeah.
Like same thing with Baldwin. When I read Baldwin's work, after being frustrated that he was so good, I always feel like, because to me, very few people had the understanding of how language can just float on the page. Because I think his writing, some people you can tell that the way they write words, there's an image that comes with the work. There's an imagery that comes with the sentences. And I always thought that he wrote like the way a painter, but like someone as intricate as a Van Gogh. Like his language is vibrant but it's also like simplistic. So it's like seeing a sunflower by Van Gogh. It's still a sunflower, right? But he's gonna paint it in a way where you'll never see a sunflower like it.
Yeah.
He could talk about Harlem. It's everybody's Harlem, but he's gonna put it in a way. He's gonna paint it in a way that's just unique to Baldwin.
Yeah.
You will always see it as his Harlem.
Yeah.
This is his story. He's always making it in a way just masterful writer.
Yeah. Baldwin's nuts.
Yeah, it's
And even just seeing how it translated the same way when he was verbally. Like I was like, oh, like you really understand this, like for real.
It was I have this idea that writers tend to have words carved into their being. Like I got words in my bloodstream. He had a lot of words. Like he was like, everything about that man was a writer. He was a writer to like the 10th degree. I don't think he could have been anything else. I couldn't imagine James Baldwin, the construction worker. There's no reason you should not be working words.
Right.
Yeah, like that's why he gives speeches, he can do novels, he could do plays. If it had to do with words, he was going to be a master at it. Like that's how you can tell someone is just a writer. It doesn't matter what it is.
Do you think there are different types of? I'm sure there maybe are. Are there different types of writers? Is like what's like? Do you have a favorite type of writer? Like you said, poet. You feel like poets are some of the best. Like
I know when I open up a book, if I'm in a mood for a certain kind of language, I have to seek that out. So sometimes it's just like I want a writer that is like able to convey thoughts in the most colorful way. That like it's not super direct, but sometimes I'm into like a Bukowski who has found like the most simplistic way of making words sit on the page. It's different. I think because of how every writer has a different approach to writing, allows you to kind of see. I don't know if I've ever been able to categorize the various forms of writers, but there's a difference. Like you can open up a website and click on 5 different articles, and they should all read different. They shouldn't all have the same tone. They shouldn't have the same voice. They shouldn't have the same like sentence structure, because these are 5 different people. So just depending on, I think, everyone's relationship with writing. You know, I always feel like I'm a music journalist because I love music just as much as I love writing. But there's some journalists that love the music more than they actually like the actual process of writing. There's some people that can write all day, but like about one album. You know, they're not into trying to figure out who the hottest rapper is. You know, they can just convey their thoughts on certain projects because they only are into certain projects. So it's different. It is definitely like a space, a different world that every writer kind of exists in. And sometimes you find writers that you just perfectly overlap with. Like you guys are just in that same tribe of writers. Some you guys don't necessarily have that relationship. But I think I just respect anybody that can sit down and put words on a page. Like I have the utmost respect because it is hard. It's not an easy thing to do, I don't think, at all. In any capacity.
Would you say that I was listening to something the other day and they were given just a format whether you're going into a meeting, you're going into a podcast, you're going into whatever, there's just I think the format was know, think, do. So he was like going into it, it's like, okay, here's what I want you to know about me going into this conversation.
Right.
So you have an understanding of who's presenting the information. And now next, think. I want you to know what I'm thinking about, what the point of this conversation is. And then lastly, do. Here's what I feel like you guys can do, whether it's meet halfway, whatever, to execute. So is there some sort of format you have like that for when you're approaching?
Dude, man, I need one. That's great.
It's pretty legit. When I heard it, I was like, oh, it makes things a lot more simple.
You have to simplify. I think that's what I'm trying to get to now, is trying to figure out the way to verbalize the process for me. I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't figured out the format of writing just yet. But I will say the best way to start ideas is to just have, like I said, like sometimes I start my pieces with a quote because it gives me the foundation. You know, I could just look at some words and be like, I know where to take this now. So I think if you just have a bunch of ideas in your head, sometimes it's hard to start, because I think the ugliest thing a writer could look at is a blank page. A blank page is scary as hell because there's nothing there. And it's up to you to put everything on that page. So sometimes if you just put some words there, like a quote or an idea or just something that you feel like encapsulates what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go, it's good just to start there. Don't start with a blank page. Start with something on there. So that way it doesn't feel as if you're walking in the dark. But I'm gonna figure out my format, because that was tight. That was very.
Well, I'm telling
that
you,
was incredible.
I was like, like I said, some stuff you hear and it's like, how did I not, as long as I've been alive on this earth, how did this not cross my mind to structure something like this? It was nuts.
You should talk to Jinx. Jinx is when he was hanging out with me, he didn't give me any like structures for writing, but just the way he was telling me about how he decides his projects he works on is I'm not gonna tell it, because I'm gonna put him on blast.
I'm gonna hit him up.
But you should ask
him
Jinx, how does he decide the things he accepts to do? Like what is the process there? Because he was like, it's like a 3-pronged process that he broke down to me, and I was like, oh, I'm taking that, and I'm starting to apply it a little bit better now. But I already know, like, I'm a sucker for anything Atlanta related. Like, if you got something that's based in the city that I can get behind, I'm probably gonna do it. Like, it's not necessarily about money. Like, I just want to. When you're in a certain position, I feel like you want to just associate yourself with the place you call home as much as possible, because at the end of the day, Atlanta's always going to be here. Like, regardless of if I am or if I'm not, it's always going to be here. So if I can insert myself into the lexicon of the city's history, then I'm always for it. Even doing this with you, man, like, you're a staple here. It's an Atlanta-based podcast. Like, of course I'm gonna come hang out with you. This is in Tree Sounds. We in the museum. Like, of course I'm gonna come.
I appreciate you, man.
Like, it's a no-brainer. When you ask me, dude, he's like, what's the best way to? It's like, just ask. It's like, what are you talking about?
No, because I like I said, it's honestly, yo, it's one of those things where if you don't, then you run the risk of not appreciating it. So it's like you have to constantly, like, even though I know we're cool, you're my guy, like, let's do it. It's just like, I'm still gonna render that to you just to make sure you know. And I'm sure it makes you feel good, just like it makes me feel good when people do it to me, for sure.
It warms my heart. Because honestly, time is, we got 24 hours. Everyone got 24 hours. But man, sometimes people their 24 hours is a little bit more hectic than other people's 24 hours.
Facts. That's
it's
a fact.
filled with a lot of time of having to do something that takes effort. So you might not have the leisure of just saying yes to certain things. But I already knew. I was like, man, I'll come hang out here anytime. Like, I'll just come hang out at Tree Sounds. If the time permits, I think I'm gonna leave here and go to the 2 Chainz. He's having a listening party tonight, so I'm gonna go do that. Try to catch Childish Major. I think he's doing something at Mean Streets.
Nice.
And then just be at home working for the weekend. I try to pick like one day, because there's something always happening in Atlanta.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. Show your face,
100%.
see what's going on with people, and then sit down and try to start knocking things out. Because writing is, to me, it's just literally sitting there. Like you don't do anything else but sit there.
Right.
You can't do it on the move. You can't do anything. Like the question I want to ask writers is, what do you do when your life is hectic? Like when you got everything happening in your life that doesn't just allow you to sit. Because I remember my sister-in-law was pregnant. She was in and out the hospital. My grandma was in and out the hospital because they had found some cancer that they were trying to get rid of immediately. And then it was just like a lot of running around with family stuff. And I was like, I am not sitting down as much as I need to. And I was like, how does other writers do this? Like, what was Baldwin's process when things in life was thunderous and you really just couldn't sit in it, I always feel like that's why it's so important to carve out time to write, is to get on a schedule of writing. So that way you have time and space for anything to happen.
Right.
So that way, if anything happened between the hours of, like, I try to write from, I'm trying to get on the morning schedule now. So between like 7 a.m. to like 1 p.m. to just be locked in.
Right.
And then have some room for rest. Because around 1 p.m., the world is up, right? Everyone's
for
up.
sure, everyone
Your
is
mom's
up. For
hitting
sure.
you by now.
Even the late sleepers, they up by
They
1.
up. So anything can happen at this point. You can get a call to assist somebody, or someone that got a flat tire and needs you to come up. Man, I didn't had friends getting like random car accidents. And I had to tell my editor, like, yo, I know the piece ain't done, but I gotta go pick my boy up.
Yeah.
So I just know, I think with my life, just things happen where I can't be at my computer.
Yeah.
So I try and carve up some time to allow life to happen, and then try to get later to the night to get back in and make sure that, anything that needs to be touched up, or if I picked up some freelance stuff to do, that there's some time for that too. And then, have time for rest and then get right back to it.
Yeah.
Got to get on the schedule.
100%.
Just it helps.
Yeah.
It helps.
I've tried to fight it for so long.
Yeah.
And it's showed me that it's not going to work for so long, but it gets to a point where it's like you start to see the real life consequences of it. And it's just like, I'm going to play the shit out of myself if I don't get my shit together.
Again, self-awareness.
Yeah.
I feel like one thing about being an artist or working in anything is that there's no exact blueprint for what works for you. So you have to spend so much time hitting your head on the ceiling. But you don't get a lot of time. You just can't be hitting your head. You got to actually figure out, okay, I got to walk through that door. It might not be the way you want to walk through it, but you got to walk through that door. Because if you don't, you're going to just keep hitting your head. And I'm 100% believe that the universe shows us. They show you, you'll see you fucking up.
Oh,
you'll see it. It's gonna be very clear. You're not doing what you're supposed to do.
Sure.
And when you're doing what you're supposed to do, they tend to show you in other ways as well. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's situations, sometimes it's just the feeling of knowing I'm on my shit. And a lot of that is when you do try to take as much control over and discipline. Discipline is my word for the year. Like, be as disciplined as possible with your art, with your craft, with your everything. Because as long as you're kind of disciplined about how things get done, things will always get done. And when things get done, things happen.
That's a fact.
Facts.
That's a fact, man. On that note, man, I appreciate you, Yoh, man.
Man, thank you. Thank you.
I had a really good time. I learned a lot about you and what you do.
I appreciate
and what it takes to be a good writer.
Man, it takes a lot to be a good writer. But I would definitely say being a good reader helps too. Read as much as I can, because it's, like I said, so much knowledge out there. And I just love to have information about things that maybe I wouldn't have be compelled to. But like, if it's written well, I'll read anything.
Yeah.
It was written well. That's why like I want to always be that kind of writer where it doesn't really matter what I'm saying. If it's written a certain kind of way,
Yeah.
you all in.
Yeah.
You all in. I'm always trying to figure out what that language is, no matter the subject. That if I'm writing about tech and all my readers are music readers, how can I make the subject appealing to them?
Right.
If you got the words on the page right, you can make people read anything.
100%.
But it also comes from reading things outside of your comfort zone, outside of what you would consider. Like, if you're just a music writer, you got to read everything. Like, the books about my bed right now have nothing to do with music. Nothing to do with music, but they'll help me in the long run to write pieces.
What are 3 new books that you're reading? And what are 3 writers that you would suggest someone look up if they're even thinking about being a writer?
First off, it's crazy because I just ordered 3 books. and I was slipping. I got caught slipping. I put in the wrong address. And there was an address that didn't exist.
Oh, my God.
So the books went nowhere. And I'm so hot. I've been dealing with the Postal Service all week for 3 different books.
Yo, how did you do that?
Just by, I had moved. So when you move, you're trying to, you got to update Amazon.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
I picked wrong number. Other 3 books. And I was like, and I felt good about it. I was like, you know what? I need some new books. Man. And then I was like, the day the first one was supposed to be there, I was like, you messed up. I don't know what told me. Something told me, I was like, you picked the wrong address in. I went and looked it up. I was like,
damn.
So then, like, all the books. The crazy part is 2 books got sent back. 1 book got delivered. And I don't know where. The address doesn't exist.
Wow.
So someone in my complex got, like, the Hanif. He did the Tribe book. It's a book about Tribe Called Quest. I'll have to figure out what the title is. But, man, I was looking forward to that. And someone got it got delivered.
The fuck out that book right now.
Because they was like, well, if sometimes when people get it delivered to their house, they'll be like, oh, this isn't. They send it back.
Yeah, they send it back.
Someone took it.
They was like, oh no, this is fire. I need this.
Whoever came up on that, but 3 books, 3 old books. I think Jack Kerouac on the Road is an excellent novel to read. Because it's not only just well written, like it's stylistically one of those books that make you want to write. Let me just say all the books that made me want to be a writer. F. Scott Fitzgerald, This Side of Paradise. Old. I know people tend to know Fitzgerald for Great Gatsby, but when I was trying to figure out what kind of writer I wanted to be, I had bought that book. It was like on sale at Barnes & Noble. And the way his words jumped off the page, I was like, if I'm going to write about hip-hop, it's got to be like that. Yeah. So I recommend This Side of Paradise. That's an old. It's like from 1928.
Damn.
Oh yeah, it's some old shit. Both of those are old. I think On the Road is 80s. I would say Baldwin, Giovanni's Room.
Okay.
That's not one I don't think people are really hip to, but the writing on Giovanni's Room. He was in his bag. He was out in Paris. Like some of the sentences are just like amazing. Me and my friends like bug out about that book at least once a year. And I'll give you one more. The Eyes Are Watching God. I think that's the one I read recently where the writing was just like how are you this good? And then 3 writers that I feel like people should keep an eye on is that's another good question. Cause I try to read everybody, honestly. I try to keep like an open mind when it comes to writers. Dynasty Writes, she's the current managing editor at DJBooth. Crazy. Super talented. I definitely would recommend reading everything and anything Donna. That's not just because of DJ Boo. Like, she's just fire. So I would highly recommend reading Donna's work. Man, I'm going to get some phone calls about you couldn't shout your boy out. EVA, OK Player Managing Editor, is an incredible writer. I don't know EVA's last name, but definitely if you go to OK Player, she's a managing editor over there. And she just has like a beautiful pen. And she can write about like everything, culture, music, like such a like broad mind. And let's see. Which one of the homies just did something crazy recently? Kind of want to get somebody older. It's an OG that I'm reading right now. Dang, man, you really put me on the spot.
Take your time.
Yeah, because I'm trying to see. What am I reading right now? Oh, man, my man Craig from Vulture. Craig is crazy. Like, his Mac Miller profile.
I know exactly. I think I follow him on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't know Craig's last name.
It's like
either.
Craig SJ or something like that. Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah.
He, to me, the way he conveys his thoughts is incredible. Like, because we both tend to review albums around the same time. And I do the one listen review, but his style to me is like traditional album review format with the very quick thoughtfulness that I think is necessary. And in 2019, you got to figure out, like, you got to get right to how you feel about an album as quick as possible. Because if you wait 2 weeks to try and review something, 9 times out of 10, no one's going to care. So the way he processes albums and is able to convey them in such a immaculate way, I think makes him one of the strongest journalists out right now, especially in the context of like music journalism. He's crazy. So yeah, man, EVA, my man Craig, and Donna. Those are my 3 that I would say like in the music journalism space. It's going crazy right now.
Word. Well, there it is. Got a whole starter pack.
It's a whole starter pack, man. Tell them Yo sent you.
All right, man. Yo, I appreciate you again. They can reach you on Twitter at
Yoh31.
Yoh31.
Yes, sir.
So follow him. He's going to get an Instagram as soon as they up the character limit.
Once we get some real words on there,
move him over there.
We're going crazy.
And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at One Could Argue. And again, man, I truly do appreciate you. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you on the next one.